Hey guys, fellow Star Trek fans, I'd like to welcome you to another video for the USS Enterprise model kits. This one is the AMT ERTL USS Enterprise from Star Trek VI, the Undiscovered Country. There are a couple of changes to show you and talk about anyway, but Star Trek VI would mark from the motion picture standpoint, if you remember at the end of the movie, in the captain's log, it marked the end, the final journey, or the final flight of the Enterprise NCC-1701-A. Excuse me. As you recall, she was called back to dry dock, and she was going to be decommissioned. The following film, Star Trek VII, we are introduced to the Enterprise B, the NCC-1701-B, which is the Excelsior class. Anyway, this one is for Star Trek VI, the Undiscovered Country. And you can see the box art changed from the last one. Star Trek V introduced a new depiction or painting of the Enterprise for the cover, and so they did on this one too. Star Trek VI, it's totally different, and for the first time we see the rear view of the ship. You can see the shuttlecraft leaving. The features on this one, it says usually, the same things by now of all the other kits. USS Enterprise plastic model kit over 22 inches long, assembled. Includes detailed shuttlecraft over 1 3/4 inches long, assembled. Authentic decals for both spacecraft, and a display stand is included. And like I've done with all the previous model kits from AMT, I will put up pictures of the actual decal sheets, and well, the decal sheet in this instance, and the instructions pertaining to this model. This particular kit that I have, there's another bonus. In addition to the shuttlecraft, it says, let me show it, bring it up to you. It says special bonus, contains Mini, the next generation USS Enterprise. And of course that's the NCC-1701-D. So this version, not all of the versions have that. This one does. I don't know if it's because it's a later kit release. Well, a release of this kit. Originally it was released in 1991. And I'll actually show that to you. On the side of the box, there it is. And I'll also put up a photograph. On the side of the box you see the different country and the different languages. And this is kit number 8617. Star Trek VI, the Undiscovered Country. And it shows the finished model kit on the other side. And what I like to do is I like to compare the model that I'm showing you guys and compare it to the previous release. So this is 6. In my last video I did the release of Star Trek V, the Final Frontier. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the differences. Obviously, the bonus of the Enterprise D. And you can see by the photographs of the finished model, again, the 5 would be on top and the 6 would be on the bottom. They did the finished model, but they did different angles. You can see the Galileo. That's a nice view of the one. This is from the 5, and the bottom one is Star Trek 6. And you can see the base better in the bottom one. It almost looks like the deflector dish is lit. Of course it's not. And that's from the previous release, Star Trek 5. It shows you the titles. Get that in a shot for you. Excuse me, I've been getting over a cold. That's why in the last few videos it seems that I'm clearing my throat every 2 minutes. I apologize about that. It shows you the different countries. Anyway, that was the previous release, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, which introduced the model kit, introduced the Shuttlecraft as a bonus, and it also changed the box art. It has a totally different illustration of the Enterprise. That being said, Star Trek VI, they did the same thing. They completely changed the box art. You can see the clouds in the background, a planet in the distance. You can see a star, and the Enterprise is actually facing away. We see a rear view of the Enterprise. You can see a lot of the detail, the nacelles. It looks really nice. Have you ever really seen an ugly depiction of the Enterprise, the Constitution class? I mean, she's just gorgeous. But the parts on the inside of the box, really, there's been no change. There's the base that was introduced with the Star Trek IV, where it changed over from the triangle to the kind of like a trophy base. That's the same. The decal sheet is basically the same. The decal sheet changed in Star Trek V because now you have decals that were added for the Shuttlecraft, the bonus Shuttlecraft. Excuse me. And for the most part, all the blow mold plastic pieces are the same. If you remember Star Trek VI, it was actually, there was a lot of amusing scenes in Star Trek VI as well. We all know how Captain Kirk feels about the Klingons. Of course, they're responsible for his death, David. That was on planet Genesis, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. Well, alright, let me go back to the beginning of the movie. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, I don't want to bore you guys, but in a nutshell, the beginning of the film, there's an explosion. And the shock waves actually affect the USS Excelsior. And it's actually commanded by Captain Sulu. To make a long story short, that was the moon Praxis, deep in the heart of Klingon territory, Klingon moon. And that was their power plant. So they immediately try to contact Praxis to offer assistance. And the first part of the video, you can see a message from Praxis itself, and there's a Klingon screaming and there's fire in the background, and that picture is taken off. And it's replaced by the Klingon High Command, and he's saying that everything is fine, there has been an explosion, please respect the treaties and the bounds and stay out of the neutral zone. So the Federation decides this is going to be a good time to make peace, and the Chancellor of the Klingon Empire, Gorkon, he wants to make peace as well. Because let's face it, the Klingon Empire, without the power plant, they're in danger of, dying, whether it's by invasion or natural lack of resources. So they want to make peace with the Federation. In order to do this, the Federation sends the Enterprise, the USS Enterprise NCC-1701-A, commanded by Captain Kirk as the olive branch, to escort the flagship of the Klingon fleet. That would be Kronos 1, and that would be transporting Chancellor Gorkon to the peace talks. And what ends up happening is it's made to look like the Enterprise fires on the Klingon ship Kronos 1, and it knocks out the gravitational units. And then what happens next is two humanoids in Starfleet uniforms with gravity boots go over there, they beam on, and then they start assassinating people to get to the Chancellor. Excuse me, and they end up assassinating the Chancellor himself. Captain Kirk, of course, they're horrified because they can't understand why the shots will be coming from the Enterprise. Incidentally, Mr. Spock did read a surge in unusual readings just before the shots went off. So the ship comes around, and General Chang, of course, he's the one that was behind it. He makes it look like Kirk did it, and he's bringing the Klingon ship about where they're going to fire on the Enterprise. You would think that, raise shields and arm photon torpedoes, but they don't do that. Captain Kirk immediately says to signal the surrender of the Enterprise. With that, they don't fire on the Enterprise. Captain Kirk beams over, and Dr. McCoy goes with them. And they go there, and the Chancellor has been shot, and Dr. McCoy tries to save him. He ends up dying, the Chancellor, and Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy are arrested, and they're brought to the Klingon Council and the Klingon courts to face charges. They are charged with his murder, and they're being set up by the Klingons. They suspend the death penalty, but they do send them to a penal colony, and it's actually an asteroid where they mine dilithium crystals. Rura Penthe is the place that they're sent to, and it's very barren ice. It's an asteroid. Incidentally, it's an asteroid that has an atmosphere on it, but it's very cold, snowing. To make a long story short, before Captain Kirk beamed over to the Kronos 1 ship, he put a tracker on Captain Kirk's back, and Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy being led to believe that they're going to be helped so they can get released. But in actuality, it was another plot to actually kill Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy. They would make it disguised as them trying to escape because they wanted them dead. They were upset that they didn't get the death penalty upheld. But what's the word I'm trying to find? For diplomatic peace, they suspended the death sentence for Captain Kirk and Dr. McCoy when they sent them there for the rest of their lives. They end up being transported back to the Enterprise because Mr. Spock locks on to the signal, and they're transported back. They end up at Kittimer. They find out that the peace talks are at Kittimer, and there's going to be an assassination attempt on the Federation president. And to make a long story short, they get back in time. The Klingon Bird-of-Prey, General Chang's Bird-of-Prey, is different in that it can fire while cloaked. So the Enterprise are basically at the mercy. And the Enterprise A takes quite a pounding in this film. The Klingon Bird-of-Prey does a number on it. The Excelsior does go to help and offer assistance. And the Klingon Bird-of-Prey shoots at the Excelsior as well. Dr. McCoy and Mr. Spock devises a photon torpedo that can actually track the neutrons or the consumption of fuel, and they arm a photon torpedo with it, and he asks Dr. McCoy to assist him, and Dr. McCoy responds, "Fascinating." But one of my favorite parts in the movie is when General Chang is spinning in his chair and he's like, "Release the dogs of war," and he's just like running his face, and as soon as Captain Kirk goes, "Fire," and you see the photon torpedo come out, Chang just stands up, and you could see him inhale and hold his breath, and then he looks around, and at that point he knows that it's coming to him, and that's when he quotes the Shakespeare, "To be or not to be," and then the bridge section, part of the ship gets hit by the photon torpedo. The damage causes the cloaking device to stop working, and the ship comes into view. With that being done, the Excelsior targets the explosion, and the Enterprise target the explosion, and they just, another one of my favorite scenes in the movie is they just blow the hell out of the Klingon ship, and it's spectacular as it starts at the bottom and then it just works its way up, and then the primary hull just blows apart at the end. And it was great to see that. And they end up saving the day again. But that marks the final mission of the Enterprise A. It actually marks the end of the USS Enterprise as the Constitutional class starship, and marks the end of the command of Captain Kirk, because then it goes over and we're introduced to the Enterprise B in Star Trek 7. But that's a totally different subject. This is Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country. There's a couple of there was a couple of really cool ships that was in this. Kronos 1, the Katinga class Klingon flagship. That was really a beautiful ship. A lot like what this one is. I'll be doing this one in the near future. I've got the Polar Lights Katinga class. This is the lighting kit. I do have the model kit. I just wanted to show you the picture, the depiction. Really, really, really pretty. And that type of class that Kronos 1 was. In addition to this, let's see, Star Trek the Motion Picture. I mean, they have one of these released for Star Trek 6 as well, but I don't have that one. I do have this one. This is from Star Trek the Motion Picture, and this is the Klingon cruiser, the Katinga class heavy cruiser. And of course, this is the Katinga class, is the modifications that were made to the D7. If you remember, the D7 is the original. It was in Star Trek. The television series was the D7 class. And technological advances, and evidently it was modified, improved, and it turned into the Katinga class battle cruiser that we see in the film. But that's Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, and like I said, the kit itself has been unchanged. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to put up a picture of all the releases up to this point. Star Trek 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'll show you the differences between each. The first 3 Star Trek films featured the Enterprise that had the base with the triangle that was from the original Star Trek kit. And from Star Trek 4 to 6, they had the more like the trophy base, and but the plastic pieces overall, with the exception of Star Trek the Motion Picture being smooth on the hull, and every other release having the Aztec pattern kind of molded into it, they basically stayed unchanged. Of course, that's coming to an end as the Enterprise B makes its debut in Star Trek 7. I believe it's Generations, and that's where the original crew kind of passes the torch to the next generation. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This was Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, and I thank you for watching, and may your passions run deep with Star Trek as mine do, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.